Hi everybody, meteorologist David Paul with you with your tropical update. Fiona bearing down on Bermuda tonight, and then eyes on the Caribbean as our system in there is getting a little bit better organized as we head into Thursday night and head toward Friday. Satellite loop of Fiona, still Cat 4, winds of 130 miles an hour. It's been like that since the middle of the day yesterday, so now we're coming up on more than 24 hours at Cat 4 intensity. Pressures have dropped way down to 932 millibars. Very low pressure in this hurricane. It's accelerating, moving north now at 20 miles an hour, which will have impacts on what this does to Bermuda wind-wise, because you're going to be on the strong side of that circulation. Even though the center is going to pass, it looks like maybe about 100 miles to your west. It's still going to be quite a blow for you guys tonight and tomorrow in Bermuda. Here's a closer look at the storm. Still a very well-defined core. Notice how the deepest convection is on the northeast side or the right-hand side to motion of the center of the storm, with winds of 130 miles an hour. Remains a low-end Cat 4. There's St. George, Bermuda. So you've already seen the cirrus clouds coming in today, Bermuda. And tonight in the wee hours and early tomorrow morning, you're going to get a hard blow here as it goes by you guys just about 100, 120 miles to your northwest early in the morning, Friday morning at 1 a.m., so in just a few hours, with winds sustained of 125 miles an hour. But remember, it's got a forward speed of 20 miles an hour. So with a counterclockwise rotation, you add 20 miles an hour to the wind speed on the right-hand side of the storm. You've got sustained winds as it blows by near the center of 145 miles an hour, and it looks likely that you're going to have wind gusts to at least Category 1 hurricane force, 74 to 95 mile an hour, or maybe stronger. We'll look at that wind forecast in just a moment. Then it races north, and then it's Friday night into the wee hours of Saturday morning that Halifax, Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, and impacts also up toward Newfoundland as the storm races up into northeastern portions of Canada and the maritime areas of the North Atlantic. This is going to end up being one of the strongest storms that you guys have seen. And this one will continue to have impacts well inland as we head into Saturday afternoon. Even though it's going to be an extra tropical low, winds will still be at Cat 1 or strong tropical storm force. And then I can't tell you the last time I've seen a tropical forecast cone extend all the way up into areas near Greenland. But that's the way it stands right now as we head into Monday, 1 p.m. Still a 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm by wind speeds. And again, one of the strongest storms northeastern Canada will perhaps have dealt with in the past 100 years. Here are the wind forecasts and the wind radii for Fiona. So here's where we stand right now. Your Cat 4 winds are just near the center of the eastern eye wall. We go into tonight, and you can see how close those Category 3 winds are forecast to get to Bermuda. You're in the Cat 2 wind forecast. Winds sustained at 96 to 110 miles an hour. In addition to the wind tonight, there are waves that are 40, 50 feet out here being driven by the winds around Fiona. So it's going to be one heck of a night for you guys tonight and early tomorrow morning going into Bermuda. Then the storm races north. It accelerates. It'll be moving north at 30, 35 miles an hour by the time it gets up east of Halifax. This is going into early Saturday morning. So Cat 1 hurricane winds, Halifax looking likely. That's on the weak side of the circulation. On the strong or dirty side, you're still going to have areas that have Category 2 winds. It looks like Nova Scotia may miss the worst of it, but you're still going to get tropical storm force winds across a big portion of Nova Scotia. So there's Fiona racing north. Gaston tropical storm will brush by the Azores, and you are under tropical storm watches for folks in the Azores, but it is just a tropical storm. You guys should be okay, but you're going to have wind and rain and waves that a tropical storm would bring. Wave off the west coast of Africa has a 60% chance for development. If it develops, it looks like it's going to move north. Spot here in the open Atlantic not showing much in the way of signs of development, 30% chance, and then it's this spot in the Caribbean that we are very focused on. And the forecast for this one is becoming a little bit sharper. Let's take a look at the moving parts. So first of all, if you were watching last night's or yesterday's update, I was speculating. I wanted to see if this would actually close off a low once it moved off the coast of Venezuela and back over the warm waters of the Caribbean. That's what the computer models had been suggesting. And indeed, it looks like it is in the process of closing off a closed circulation. Now, it has not yet been upgraded to a tropical depression because we don't have any convection or thunderstorms over the center of this. They're being displaced by the upper level winds, which are still shearing this thing apart. But at the surface, it's getting clearly better organized, and that's what the models were suggesting. That appears to be what's happening, and so it's becoming more likely that these models are going to verify. Here's the bigger picture. There's our little circulation getting going. You can see the upper level clouds are being ripped off to the southwest by the upper level shear coming out of the northeast. However, that shear is going to relax, and it looks likely the storm is going to begin to get itself going and perhaps will be upgraded as we go into Friday and likely through the weekend. Sea surface temperatures are running well above normal in this area. They've been like that all season long. What are the sea surface temperatures? Upper 80s to near 90, 87 ahead of the storm, 88 is what the storm's in right now. So there's plenty of ocean heat content, plenty of energy for this to work with. GFS and Euro are in pretty good agreement for the next day or two going into Sunday, with Jamaica likely being impacted by a tropical storm of one strength or another just south of the Jamaican islands. So you're looking at winds coming out of the southeast, blowing northwest across the island. If the Euro's correct, it's a little closer to you, a little more wind and rain. If the GFS is correct, it's a little further south from you, but you can expect enhanced wind and rain chances going through the weekend, in particular on Sunday for Jamaica. But it looks like just a tropical storm at that point to the south of you. So that wouldn't bring major impacts, but clearly you would have some impacts. That's Sunday. Okay, Cayman Islands. By this time, it looks like it may be reaching hurricane strength. So the Cayman Islands, you guys may have to deal with a low-end hurricane going into Monday. And you can see that the Euro has it passing to your east, and the GFS has it passing to your west. So the Cayman Islands are kind of surrounded by two of the models that we lean very heavily on for hurricane forecasting. So it looks likely you will have some moderate to significant impacts, Cayman Islands, from perhaps a low end, maybe a Cat 1, maybe even a strong Cat 1 hurricane for the Cayman Islands going into Monday. Then we go into Tuesday. Euro comes across Cuba. Havana's right about there, so it puts a hurricane across Havana, Cuba, and then moving in toward the Florida Keys going into Tuesday. While the American model splits the uprights into the Yucatan Channel just off the western tip of Cuba, and it's a little bit of a stronger system as well. But both of these models now are in a little bit better agreement that we're going to get this turn, and the system is going to head into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. That's beginning to look like a little bit more likely outcome. Folks along the western Gulf of Mexico, you can't take your eyes off this for a second, in case this forecast does decide to change. But here's where we stand now going into Wednesday, with Florida being split by the Euro has a hurricane off to your east, and the GFS has a hurricane in the eastern Gulf off to the west of Florida. So that scenario would put the Florida Panhandle perhaps in play. The Euro scenario puts the Keys, Tampa, St. Pete, the southern tip of Florida in play going into Tuesday night and Wednesday. That's where the two big dogs stand right now. What's causing them to think like that? Well, this trough. How much of an influence will this trough have in wanting to yank and pull the storm northward? And there are actually more influences going on here than meet the eye. The trough is indeed digging down, and that's what helps to pull these storms to the north. However, on Monday, as this is nearing Cayman and the Yucatan Channel, there's also a little ridge of high pressure here. We're going to be on the west side of that ridge, and that clockwise flow is also going to help to encourage to bring it up the backside of that ridge. We go into Tuesday. There's the trough sharpening. It's being caught up in its influence. Here's the ridge, clockwise rotation, backside of that ridge. Yeah, that wants to move it north as well. So based on this scenario, it's looking more likely that this will take a turn and end up somewhere most likely in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Again, not set in stone, but most likely. In addition, there's a little trough out to the west as well at that time frame. That's going to be moving to the east, and that will also help to pick up and kind of shove that to the east. There's the trough, the storm getting caught up in it. And at this point, I mean, that type of of a ridge just to the east, and then this trough to the north is definitely going to yank that onto the north. So Florida, perhaps it will be you that will be most impacted and most in play from this system. Perhaps. It's still a long way to go before we have a final solution here. We've got another way of looking at this. Dome of high pressure, that's what's made Texas so hot. That's going to back off. There's that other ridge I'm talking about. It's going to be on the western side of that ridge. And then in the middle, that trough. And in general, if you just look at the picture, you can see how you've got a mountain of air here. You've got a mountain of air here. And there's a valley in the middle. And the storm wants to take the path of least resistance. And that would be like a wagon train through the valley. It doesn't want to go up the mountains. It wants to stay in the valley. That's the easy path. And so that's why the models are all suggesting eastern Gulf being picked up by that trough. And there will be a surface front associated with that, which will bring much drier air into the middle part of the United States. Spaghetti plots this evening have also kind of tightened up a little bit, and they are most gathered here. Western tip of Cuba, maybe through the Yucatan Channel, and then it's the eastern Gulf of Mexico and Tampa to Miami and the Florida Keys, perhaps the most likely to be impacted. But no kidding. All the weather people and everybody who watches weather and everybody with marine interests and coastal interests from Nicaragua and Honduras to the Yucatan to Tampico to Brownsville to Houston, all the way around to Miami, and even out into the Bahamas, are watching this very, very carefully because there is still a great deal of uncertainty as to exactly where it's going to end up. These models run out into Wednesday evening, but you can see they have, at least in this latest run, kind of tightened up on the eastern portion of the Gulf of Mexico. So it's something we're clearly watching very, very carefully across the entire Gulf still. There's where we stand right now. I read your comments. Hit me up on social. Until next time, stay safe and stay weather smart.